Hey, hon. Okay, how do I do it? I didn't put it in. Ye- Okay, well, I didn't put it in because I don't fill any of that in. I don't. Yeah, but I never changed anything because I don't even put in the guest names. Where? I don't see that. I don't have to log in. I just hit and I just come in. Uh-huh. Let me see if I can hover over it. Okay. Remove from stage. That's what I can do. Solo layout. Mute. Let me see. I'm just saying I don't see that on there. Yeah, because I didn't even add Miss Rowley's name. I never get any of that. Okay, how would I do that? In settings? Okay. Let me see. General layout, guests. Okay. No. General. No. Nope. Nope. Yeah, I don't have that. You know what? Let me just do it in the next one, okay? 'Cause I need to go on and get started. And I'm going to come up at 3. All right? All right, honey. Bye bye. Miss Colleen, let's get right to it. Miss Colleen, let's get right to it. I
Sounds
used to
great.
go to I used to go to the Dollhouse Museum at the Museum of Science and Industry. Did you ever see that? The Colleen first. She had a castle in miniature. It's absolutely fabulous. It was its own room at the Museum of Science and Industry. Just she was an actress, she'd been very wealthy, and it was a castle. And
Huh.
everything was in miniature. Just I'm up in 5, 4, 3. Hi everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Well, guess what? President Trump is here and we are still here too. But we have got a lot to unpack. These are ever changing times. It's such an interesting time. And I wonder, I'm getting feedback. Hold on, everybody, stop. I'm getting feedback. I'm getting feedback. That's not going to work. Okay, let me see why I'm getting feedback. Okay, hello. Oh my gosh, it's just this. Okay, okay. I'm no longer getting feedback, but I am. Okay. Hello, hello, hello. Okay, let me see. Hey, I'm getting feedback. Is that because I'm talking to you or something? Okay, let me hang up. Okay. All right. Okay, okay. All right, we're good. We're going to come up in 5. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's the day after President Trump has been sworn in, and guess what? We're all still here. But boy, there's a lot to unpack. Colleen Rowley, 2022, one of Time Magazine's Persons of the Year, great whistleblower, former retired FBI agent. And I just want to know, because you have so much experience in this space, help me to understand pardons, commutations, a preemptive pardon, what the potential fallout of that is. We need to know what that is because it almost seems as if people will be allowed to do whatever it is that they want, and they'll have a pardon waiting for them, or that they could have done whatever they wanted, and they'll have a pardon. So I just need to know what we're looking at, everybody. I'm on AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, which is right where you are. And of course, I am on Blue Sky at santitajackson.bsky.social. And I am on the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. And please, everybody, just go there. Don't go to Santita Jackson. You can become my friend at Santita Jackson and Friends. Santita Jackson is what they call a landing page. It just allows me to have all other pages. I can't accept any more friends there. They're continuing to kick people out. I'm not doing it. Facebook is doing it. They have a limit on the number of people you can have there, but I'm unlimited on Santita Jackson and Friends. So please, everybody, please, please, please go to Santita Jackson and Friends. That's where we can become friends. And please meet me on X at Santita J, at Santita J. So let's get right to it. I've got a lot to talk about. What about these preemptive pardons? Apparently, while President Trump was giving his speech at his inauguration, a funny thing happened on the way to the forum. Pardons were issued. Well, they've been issued a lot, and that's what presidents do when they are getting out of office. But it seems like we've had a lot of them of late. Colleen Rowley, I mean, at least they've gotten a lot of publicity. Hey, Samantha. Hey, Bernadette. Hey, Mildred. Everybody, please like and share, Bernadette, like and share, like and share, like and share. You're helping us with the algorithm when you do. But this is from CNN. Biden issues preemptive pardons for Trump critics and Biden family members. It begins. President Joe Biden on Monday issued an extraordinary slate of preemptive pardons for prominent critics of President-elect Donald Trump and members of his own family, not Hunter, his sister, brother-in-law, brother. I mean, it's just really wide-ranging, this net. Using executive prerogative as a shield against revenge by his incoming successor, while also guaranteeing his closest relatives are not subject to future prosecutions. That's clemency for General Mark Milley, Dr. Anthony Fauci, members of Congress who served on the January 6th committee. It's astonishing. And these pardons that he's been offering, many legal scholars are saying that they are unprecedented in their scope. That is in terms of what they cover people from. And so I said, well, let me just reach out to someone who knows much more about this than I. I just know it all feels very, very strange. And even newly installed President Trump, 47th president of the United States, also the 45th. I think he's only the second president in history to get into office, leave office, and be brought back to office. These are ever-changing times, everybody. Aretha Franklin sang it along with Michael McDonald, one of my favorite songs, Ever-Changing Times. That's what it is. But what about a preemptive pardon? And what about pardoning Anthony Fauci, as he's been facing very tough questioning on the Hill led by Senator Rand Paul? But there are questions that people have had about these medicines for a long time. And there's a lot of data that's raising even more questions as we are facing more and more looming threats from the bird flu, this, that, and the other. Oh, my goodness, there's just so much going on. And he's being blocked from any kind of prosecution. And he said, that's a good thing. He said, I didn't ask for it, but my family's been harassed and I have been anxious. Okay, I've given a little bit of a thumbnail sketch of a backstory, but Colleen Rowley, I'm giving it to you. I don't know where you want to begin. Well, let's start at the beginning. Yesterday, in the middle of technically just before President Biden was out of office. I mean, like minutes. I think you have to be sworn in like at 12:01 when I sang at the Clinton inauguration, I did the national anthem. They said, as important as the national anthem is, if you start singing or if you're in the middle of that song by, I think, like 11:59, 30 seconds or 12:01, we will stop you from singing because the president has to be sworn in at said time. Really, that's what they told me. So I said, okay. So they said, so if we're running a little long or running a little short, or because they had timed everything down to the millisecond, they said, now you'll have to stop and you can begin again, but the president must be sworn in by said time. So I'm sure in that little space of time, he was able to get those pardons in that many people have found, many legal scholars and people in intelligence and people in the know in politics have said, certainly questions have been raised. Colleen Rowley, the timing, the preemptive pardons, the pardons of people about whom we've had a lot of questions. What do you make of this? Oh, you got to unmute. It's okay. You're good. No. Go back.
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me?
Oh, got you now.
Oh, good. Yeah. All of this whole range of executive orders that Trump issued right away, just like a hurricane coming in. I don't know what number we're even up to now with executive orders. And, right away, he was prepared. He came loaded for bear. I'm talking about Trump now. And of course, on his part, Biden in the last minute with these preemptive pardons. And so the news commentators have their hands full trying to tell us. And I would say that old movie, The Good, Bad, and Ugly. If you look at them, some of the executive orders are a bit of a mixed bag. And the pardons, I applaud the pardon, the last minute commutation of Leonard Peltier.
Oh, absolutely.
I wrote a letter actually based on, the mercy at his late age. He's 80, I think around 80 years old, 50 some years in prison. And so I had actually written a letter to the pardon attorney 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. That, they should really think about this. And of course, they should have thought about it even before this and comparing his sentence to others, etc. So, but the preemptive pardon slew that Biden issued for his family members, but also for Fauci. And I'm not sure if there were any of the other people involved in the COVID pandemic. I think I know if it was just Fauci. And then also the January 6th committee. Those are really unprecedented and really wrong in a lot of ways, in my opinion. And I'm speaking now as a person who's, has worked on the criminal law enforcement and actually taught FBI agents constitutional law. I taught the Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Sixth Amendment, First Amendment law, constitutional law to agents for 13 years here in Minnesota. So speaking legally, this preemptive pardons are on a par with the illegality of preemptive war. We always had a thing. You cannot start preemptive war saying, oh, well, we're going to start first. No, that's illegal. That's the Nuremberg principle under the old World War II law, that you can't have a supreme crime of starting a preemptive war. And I know people look at this and think, oh, well, his family, we all love our own families. So even if your own family, a member of your own family commits a crime, well, there's a soft spot in his heart for his son and his brother, etc. And people might be sympathetic to that. No, well, he's just a human and he's got a soft spot in his heart for his own son. But then, of course, he extended it to other people. Well, it does a lot of wrongful things. One, it sets a precedent of undermining the law entirely. And you know what? I imagine Trump will probably take it. If Trump has and or his advisors are thinking at all, they may well take advantage of the precedent set by Biden in saying, if you commit a crime, don't worry. And if you commit a crime that I told you to, I green lighted, or I was part of, or I helped cover up, I will protect you and shield you at the end. Don't worry. You might remember Scooter Libby.
Yes.
When he at Cheney, Vice President Cheney's bidding, leaked the identity of a secret CIA agent, and this was considered a big deal at the time. It went on the investigation of who was responsible for uncloaking an active CIA agent, which by law, what?
Valerie Plame, right?
Valerie Plame, the identity by law. Again, this is a statute, a U.S. statute that protects the identities of not everyone in the CIA, but people who are working undercover. And Scooter Libby, and I think others, it wasn't just him, I think there was a couple others, leaked this to news sources. And you know what? There's a lot of leaking that has always gone on. And usually it's been mostly overlooked. They haven't tried to prosecute, but they began to do this recently in trying to prosecute whistleblowers and leakers. They kind of consider them the same thing. By the way, I don't consider leaking and whistleblowing the same thing at all. They're not the same.
Different.
Whistleblowing, there is a process for whistleblowing. And you are supposed to go for instance, in the FBI, to your inspector general. You're supposed to make your disclosures about the ongoing illegal action or whatever internally, at least. And by the way, to Congress. That's not leaking if you give information to Congress. There's an old law, I forget the name of it now, but it was the Wisconsin, the right to warn. So Congress are supposed to be able to understand what's going on. There's not supposed to be this kind of secrecy. But anyway, that's whistleblowing. Leaking is usually done by higher level folks, like for instance, McCabe in the FBI. He was the acting director. Comey, who was the FBI director. You know, we always think of a whistleblower as the less powerful person who just knows about something, not the top guy. Usually the top guy, when they are the leaking, these top officials, it's hard to categorize them as whistleblowers. You know, even Mark Felt, if you go all the way back to Deep Throat, his case was kind of an odd thing because Mark Felt was high level in the FBI. And you know what? He was doing this for some of his own political purposes. He wasn't doing this merely to get the information out to the public. He had his own motivations. And again, so he's kind of in the middle, I guess, of this thing. But there is a difference. And going back to what I was saying about the pardons, if you are committing an actual crime, even like Nixon's men breaking into Watergate, that's a great example. So if the president has given you the task of doing something nefarious or wrong and illegal, and now the president later on, Nixon could have said at the end of, when he's leaving, right before he leaves, he says, by the way, I pardon Chuck Colson. I pardon all of the guys that I had break into the Watergate Hotel. Think about that. This is the kind of precedent that Biden is setting. And, I worry that Trump would take advantage of it. I think that Trump is not above giving illegal orders himself and then saying, and then if somebody balked and they didn't want to commit an illegal act, one of his, loyalist guys who maybe did have some conscience and said, I don't want to do that. I don't want to spy on this person. I don't want to fudge on a foreign intelligence warrant. I don't want to do that, because I might get into trouble. I'm the low level person here and I may get into trouble later on. And then the president could say, oh, don't worry. The president can pardon anyone they want preemptively. That's pretty incredible. So this is beyond a slippery slope, what Biden just did. and I would, I don't know if you want me to talk, but for instance, Fauci was being, whatever investigation was already completed of Fauci, it did not look good. They found out all kinds of things. There's more information still coming out about his profiteering off the pandemic and his involvement in having created through gain of function funding, the gain of function science that was conducted initially in the United States. Fauci was part of that, then moving it over to Wuhan, China, and then most importantly, Fauci and others covering up that this was a man-made virus that ended up killing millions of people. I mean, honestly, that kind of illegal action where now we can mess with viruses, fuse a toxic spike protein onto a really contagious virus, make it contagious to humans. I mean, you can't even, no author could have dreamt up a more scary scenario than what we had to live through with Fauci on our television and everyone trusting every word out of his mouth because he was this nice old grandfatherly, and the media told us he was like the top scientist and all this. None of that was actually true. He never even practiced medicine. He was a bureaucrat, and he was making money off of all of this big pharma solutions to the pandemic that he had been involved in helping create. Oh, I mean, honestly, his pardon is really shocking. I would say even more shocking than the pardon of Hunter Biden. Some of these people could have been involved in pretty serious frauds, but I don't think anything approaches the kind of thing that Fauci was involved in. Now, Biden leaked that. The Biden administration leaked that they were thinking about pardoning Fauci. And, people like, oh, well, what, people didn't think about it too much, I guess. And there were a few people that wrote, how wrong is that? But now I think the full impact of what the Biden administration did is coming home. Going back to the January 6th committee, he not only pardoned the committee, but then Biden did, but then Trump pardoned many of the people who had trespassed into the Capitol. And so you've got a double whammy there. You've got Biden pardoning the committee, which, by the way, was quite biased in a lot of ways, but then also Trump pardoning the 1,200, I think, or I don't know how many, 1,000 people that were charged, and some of them convicted, many of them convicted of having trespassed, and some of them even committed violence. Now, good, bad, and ugly, I would not be for pardoning commission of violence even after the fact, unless a long time has elapsed. And maybe at this point, it's a question of, compassion and mercy for somebody who has a disordinately long sentence, something like that. But but then the people who actually were there, present, and maybe they did step into the Capitol, but a lot of them didn't know what was going on. They were walking through. That might be different. That's why I say it's kind of good, bad, and ugly here, because I think there's a mixture of things going on. But what that does, of course, is it does further polarize. That the combination of the Trump's pardoning all of the people that went into the Capitol to try to think they could stop the election results or whatever, and then the combination of Biden having pardoned the entire committee, that actually is very polarizing. That does not serve to unify. That keeps this two-party, mostly kabuki theater going. And so, yeah, I would say that's not a good thing either. But yeah, the preemptive pardons are really problematic. Really problematic. You can't tell someone that they can commit a crime because I will pardon you afterwards. That is a terrible precedent to have set.
And what does this say about the people who said that they didn't ask for these pardons? Like Dr. Fauci said, I didn't ask for this. General Milley said, I didn't ask for this. Um, I mean, what does that say? And I want to let this be your backdrop. John Walsh, and I hear you, John, and I thank you and Karen for tuning in. Said, guess who called Biden the most progressive president since FDR? That's right, Bernie Sanders. I won't hold my breath for your apology to your listeners for all the misinformation you and guests have spread about Joe. And then he continued, how did we get Trump again? Look in the mirror, Santita. You and your bitter Bernie bros spent the last 4 years smearing Biden with GOP Russian talking points, plus making excuses for Trump's rancid behavior. And like and share if you want more right-wing propaganda wrapped in progressive rhetoric. And I think, Karen, you said this is what folks asked for when they made false equivalencies. Trump and Biden are not the same. Hope you're not implying 47 to this only because Biden did. Come on, media is complicit again. You know, I have to tell you, it's what is confounding to me, Colleen Rowley, is that we cannot engage in self-reflection, which is why I think the Democrats lost. That's part of the reason. They did not look at Roots Action, came out with a postmortem in 2016. They said, this is where the campaign went wrong. And you would have easily, and they, Norman Solomon and Jeff Cohen and Roots Action have been called blasphemous. People have accused them of not being true Democrats. I mean, all the things that you and Karen are saying about me in this show and my guests now. And it's unfortunate because if you can't engage in self-reflection, if you cannot be corrected, then you will never become correct. I think that Joe Biden did a lot of wonderful things, and he did some things, and there were some things that he could have done that could have been more wonderful that he did not do, which hurt Kamala Harris, and more than that, it hurt the American people. Ukraine hurt the American people. It drained our coffers. We've given way more than $100 billion to them. That's what's on top of the ledger. You can give up to a certain, you can allocate up to a certain amount and never have to report it publicly. We've given untold sums to them. We've given untold sums to the Middle East. And look, we've got hundreds of thousands, a couple 100,000 people at least who are dead up under the rubble. So right-wing talking points, no, I don't do that. I know people on the right. I know people on the left. I don't do talking points. I really am not into the partisan stuff. I'm into principle. That's why I reached out to Colleen Rowley. She put her whole life on the line to say, you know what? This is where the FBI erred. She had given her life to that agency, her life. And yet on principle, she had to say, you know, there were errors here. And if we don't correct them, this will happen again. And so it's just in that context that, I mean, looking at these pardons, I think we ought to be able to be clear thinking enough and fair enough to call balls and strikes, Colleen Rowley. We ought to say, you know, this was incorrect. And whether you're a Democrat or Republican or an independent, whoever gets into office, this is what leads to an abuse of power. Is that what you see?
The problems oftentimes are systemic. Again, we often associate things with the person. And often what you have with the presidencies is a ping pong effect. And so one will piggyback. One president, Obama is a great example. You know, if you go back, we all had so much hope that he would hold the Bush administration accountable for launching an unjustified preemptive war on Iraq. We hope that he would close Guantanamo, that he would end the torture in the black sites. And what does Obama do? He comes in and is silent for a long time and then finally says, you know, we got to go forward. We're never going to go back. What that means when a president says we don't want to look backward, it means that they intend to build on what the prior president established. And these things are systemic. Well, the reason we have a rule of law, we have a constitution. I mean, our founding fathers were smart because they said, you know, human beings, when they get into positions of power, will be tempted to abuse it. Benjamin Franklin, Madison, they were all very smart about how the King George effect will happen. So they tried to build in checks and balances. They tried to build in the Bill of Rights, of course, that people would have these rights. And this was to build systems that would try to sustain no matter who got elected. And what has slowly happened, and especially since the 9/11, is this what I objected to as imperial presidency. Now, we're not talking under Trump. People are bringing up the term again, imperial presidency under Trump. But John Yoo, under Bush, the Bush George W. Bush, the first time, said he wrote memos to create an imperial presidency, saying the president would be all powerful. That's under Article 2 of the Constitution. He didn't say, well, the president can't monitor without a warrant. That's a law. That was our Constitution. You can't do that under the Fourth Amendment. And he allowed it. He wrote it in there. He said it's an emergency. I actually challenged John Yoo one time in person when he was speaking at a law school. And the title of his talk was Imperial Presidency. He said in wartime, we have to have the martial law. We'll have martial law just like they have in Ukraine right now. This was all the way back in the Bush administration. But what happens when this happens and you get a new president? It builds. It doesn't go back. We never, Congress never voted to change warrantless monitoring of Americans under 702 of the, I forget the name of the law. Never, it just built. It just got worse and worse. And it got worse and worse to the point where, when Bush became president the first time, they were actually trying to monitor the Trump administration. So when Trump became president, they did false affidavits to the FISA court to monitor his aid in the hopes that they would catch the whole Trump administration. It just got, what I'm saying here, piggybacking is the nice term, but what often happens is they play off each other. And I know people don't want to equate the presidents, but oftentimes it can get worse if you do not get to the root of the problem and don't change the system. And so there's a lot of systemic change that's necessary. And by the way, I don't have a lot of hope that Trump is going to come in, as he promised. He's going to clean the swamp. People, I'd clap for that. I would clap for cleaning up the swamp in Washington, D.C. Some of these people, like I said, the leaking that went on, the Russiagate hoax, but all kinds of things as well. There's so much, a lot of corruption in Washington. I would be all for that. Do I think that he's actually going to change the system to actually, drain the swamp? I don't think so. But that's what should happen. And then go back to the law and say, no, this was wrong. We can't have any more. Maybe they could challenge this up to the Supreme Court, preemptive pardons. I just don't think that this should be allowed. A president should have power to pardon whoever he wants on the basis of mercy, compassion, and maybe doesn't even have to give good reasons for it. After that person that has already been investigated and after you've gotten facts established. But to tell somebody that they can commit a crime and not ever even have to be prosecuted or you go through this and that I'll pardon you, that is wrong. And I don't care what president does that kind of thing. That is wrong. It's wrong no matter if Republican, Democrat, or anything in between. And, again, when we look at all the things going on, we're going to see this. I tell people the truth is a zigzag line. And, there are presidents that are noted for bad behavior, like Nixon. But you know what? Nixon did do a couple of good things. Kissinger and Nixon were terrible on a lot of things Vietnam, a lot of things they were terrible on. But they opened up China with trade, so they did something good. Reagan was the same. Reagan did some good things. He started to end the Cold War. I mean, so there were some good things that presidents have done. Usually they are mixed. Most of them are mixed bags. Like I said, good, bad, and ugly. But this notion that we keep building on ending our system of law so that we now have power. We have this kind of Machiavellian power that controls everything, not a standard, not a minimal standard. And we're gonna suffer. The American people are gonna suffer for this kind of thing if we allow it to continue.
Well, how do we get out of? I mean, how do we get out of the? Everyone is so locked into their side, this one sideism, that I think we've made everything so personal that we've gotten away from principle. I mean, it's just become, people are really locked into their sides, and I just want things to be right. Colleen Raleigh. I mean, I just, I think that if you don't cut corruption off at the root, everybody gets choked. I mean, it kills the system. It kills us all. I mean, and so, I mean, you're going to see. So you got if Democrats are being bad actors, you need to call them out. If Republicans are being bad actors, you need to call them out, because it damages the system, and no one is safe. If you have Russian disinformation, or whatever the disinformation comes from, because it's not just Russia, you and I both know that. Wherever the disinformation is coming from, you call it out, but they don't do that. It's just so uneven. And yes, we will be talking about Elon Musk in a bit, because he gave a Nazi salute. That's in the next hour, and the corporate media are not talking about it at all. And the ADL has swept it under the rug. They said, "Well, he didn't really mean it." Are you serious? So we'll talk about that. I mean, because we're not playing by one set of rules, Colleen Raleigh. We're not.
Elon Musk is another example of this piggybacking and how things can get worse and worse. When Citizens United Supreme Court case came down that said anybody can donate, there's no limits on campaign contributions, and we don't care about the special interests that might come from all these big campaigns. And then you see Elon Musk, he's one of the big contributors. And so don't be surprised if it can't be fixed. Again, if you can't fix the system, I would say with all of this special interest controlling elected leaders, and it's not even the president, it's also Congress and the Senate. If we can't fix the root problem here, which is they have no business asking for and receiving millions of dollars from these special interests, and some of them actually foreign interests like Israel, like the foreign agents law doesn't even require, they have one exception, that Israel doesn't have to register as a foreign agent. And so that money that goes into campaigns, you wonder why we had to witness a genocide for 15 months. And that money is, and everybody knows this. I mean, books have been written about it, and that money, but that's the root problem. And again, it is not a partisan issue. It is not a partisan issue. The big money has to come out of campaigns, or we will have, or what we, don't be surprised with what we get, which are corrupted politicians in Washington. Because I said this back in 2005 when I ran as a Democrat here against the Republican. He was a former colonel, pro-war. He had been in Vietnam, bombing in Vietnam, and he was the quintessential. He was for the Iraq War. He kept saying that we're winning the war in Iraq. His name was Colonel Klein, and he was our incumbent Republican. And when I ran against him, I saw that he was getting money from these various corporate entities. I think this even was right before Citizens United came down, but he was getting the maximum amount from these corporate entities. So one of our debates, I said, well, you can't be neutral. How can you be neutral after you've taken this money? Mother Teresa would have a hard time being neutral, stuffing her pockets with all of this money. And I said, he was a little bit shocked that I brought up Mother Teresa. And he said, "Oh, are you challenging my my honesty?" Well, I said, "Yeah." Essentially, that's right. I mean, that this is a human thing. We should not be allowing this. And I'm just pointing to one of the systemic problems that our country has slowly gone down. People know, you mentioned, why did people vote? Why did a lot of people finally, that Trump got the popular vote? Why? I attribute it to one reason. One reason is people wanted some kind of change. They're hoping. Maybe it's a wishful thinking. It's wishful thinking on the part, but there was a lot of people that, the price of eggs and all of these things, and they believed, maybe they will have buyer's remorse now after seeing what happens. They may well have buyer's remorse. There were a lot of people that were swayed by these campaign promises that appealed to them. It's something the Democrats, by the way, like you mentioned, they did not take notice of when Hillary Clinton lost. They should have done an autopsy and said, what went wrong here? Why have we lost the working class base that we normally had? Why? We didn't appeal to them. We appealed to Wall Street. We are appealing more to Wall Street than we are to working people and unions, etc. Well, they should have done that. Trump comes along and he did it. And so I would say that's one of the reasons he probably won. Now, I'm not saying that it was a good thing, and I'm not saying that people, like I said, the voters who thought Trump was going to really change everything and drain the swamp, etc. I think a lot of times that they're going to be sad. Oh, and the war. How many people voted? A lot of people voted for Trump. They've done a poll recently, and they were very, like myself, traumatized by watching babies and children being murdered in Gaza, being bombed. And I mean, we were traumatized for 15 months watching this. And Biden green-lighted the whole thing. And
hey, everybody, stay right here. Okay, you were saying Biden, you froze. We were traumatized by Gaza. Biden kept amping it up by giving the money, feeding this. Okay, she's frozen, and of course it would freeze now, but that's all right. We're going to wait for Colleen Rowley. Everybody like and share, and I love the engagement. And like I said, all I ask is that we keep it respectful. We don't name call here, and we don't need to be unkind to people here. We can have a difference of opinion without being nasty, without being disagreeable. And so John and Karen and everybody else, keep it coming. And you're not taking up any space in my head. I agreed to be in this spot just so that Miss Rowley is back, and I want her to continue, because what she is doing is giving us information that most of us do not have because we've not been in her space. It's always great to be able to talk to someone who has existed in the space, who understands really where this comes from. I reached out to Ray McGovern, I think January 7th, might have been even January 6th, 4 years ago. Because Colleen Rowley, I wanted to know, what do you see? Because I think that you see some things that I do not see. I'm not a CIA analyst. You've been that. And in fact, you analyzed information for the President of the United States. You were the head of that group of CIA analysts who let the president know what was going on in the world. So that's why I reached out to him. That's why I reached out to Colleen Rowley. So you know what? And Snowman, what'd you say? If you are getting comments like that, you're doing the right thing. I think so. My father always said, and the Bible tells you, beware when people only give you praise. So it's all right. But you were saying that, that Biden kind of took us back a few paces. People in whom we've invested some hope, hoping that you would do the right thing. No one's asking for perfection, Colleen Rowley. Just presence, and just try. And I need to have someone with whom I can negotiate, right? And this is Wow. I mean, are we going down the rabbit hole, Colleen Rowley? What say you? Are you back? Oh. Well, want to know what you all think. Are we going down the rabbit hole? Are you comfortable with these preemptive pardons? Are you comfortable with them? Just let me know if that's what if you're comfortable with them. Colleen Rowley, you were freezing, but that's all right. You know what I think about those things. But go on, because we only have about 8 or 9 minutes left. But I want to give them all to you. Oh, and of course she's freezing. What? But that's all right. I want to know from you, what do you think about these preemptive pardons? Do they make you feel comfortable? Do you think that they're the right thing to do? I mean, because the thing is, we've got to get away from, oh, if the person I like or the person I voted for does it, it's okay. If the person I did not vote for, it's a bad thing. Come on, you guys. We got to grow up in our politics. We're bigger than that. Colleen Rowley, we've been freezing, so I'm gonna let you go. Well, I got
Okay. When you asked the earlier whether Millie and Fauci said that they didn't want a pardon, that's something, again, with government secrecy. There's no way we would ever know what kind of deliberations went on. All we know is the Biden administration floated preemptive pardons and mentioning Fauci specifically. Mm-hmm. So if Fauci didn't want this, he had all kinds of avenue to say, don't do it, because now people will think I'm guilty. They'll think I'm guilty because you're pardoning me ahead of time. He could have said that. I didn't hear him say anything. And now to deny that they had any, talking about this, I really doubt that. I really think they all know each other. I think that they probably did talk, or at the very least, some of these advisors to Biden, Jake Sullivan, they are all political animals, and they are into these political games. Remember when Karl Rove used to be criticized for his shenanigans? They called him dirty tricks.
Oh, yeah.
Karl Rove went after John McCain one time, and he had a family photo of John McCain with one of his adopted daughters was darker skinned. That's and right. He accused John McCain of having an affair or something like that. It was crazy. It was all made up by Karl Rove. And that kind of thing did exist. It went all the way back to the Bush administration. But guess what? Those dirty tricks, because they were not stopped. No one ever said Karl Rove he shouldn't even be on our television now, as bad as he was with these political dirty tricks. And guess what? We just built on it. We built on it to the point where we got Russiagate, and we got the hoax and all this. And this actually endangers national security when we go this route, because we're telling the world, this isn't just about us Americans. The whole world can look at what's going on here when we have officials and this kind of corruption, etc. So yeah, it's very bad thing to set a precedent for this. There are ways, I think, that they could try to address it and rein it back in. Unfortunately, I'm not optimistic that they will. I think that every successive presidency, if things are not stopped, will say, I can take advantage of that. If we can violate the law this way, I can take advantage of it too. And I would look for Trump. I mean, I'll be I hope I'm wrong, but when Biden sets a precedent of giving preemptive pardons, and they haven't even been investigated, but there's certainly a lot of knowledge about committing serious crimes, and he gives a preemptive pardon, I will be surprised if Trump does not take advantage of that with his people and other future presidents. So that's, again, the Department of Justice should think long and hard about how they can take some actions, maybe by bringing things up to the Supreme Court. I think there are ways. Right now, by the way, there are I just saw this, just flashed, 18 state attorney generals are suing for Trump's declaring
Okay, they are suing the Trump administration. And I think they're suing them. Is it over Doge? And they just kicked Vivek Ramaswamy out of that. And so, as it 18 civil rights groups, just give me one moment. Okay, let me see, everybody. Let me know what you think about these preemptive pardons. These preemptive pardons. What do
Yeah,
you
good.
think?
That's good.
So,
If the Trump
18
goes too
groups.
far,
If Trump goes too far, if Trump goes too far, uh, oh my goodness, it's all right. That Trump goes too far. But what do you all think, everybody? We've heard a lot, and we're going to hear some more. 18 states are suing the Trump administration over the order to overturn birthright citizenship, right? Colleen Rowley, you there? Over birthright citizenship. I mean, but civil rights groups are also
and
suing
that's
the Trump administration over Doge. So I mean, why is it important that these attorneys general are suing the Trump administration?
it's important that we have a legal system, and it's important that people use
Okay, you guys, it just well, you know what? It
it.
never fails.
Citizens can bring lawsuits.
Okay, it's important that citizens can bring lawsuits and
Right. It's important that attorney generals and even private citizens can bring lawsuits when there is an egregious violation of law. And again, our judges,
okay, you guys, what
they're
do you think?
all in all, this the system works because oftentimes this is how you can
Everybody, she's saying that the system does work,
get
and
change.
you know what? Okay, you're freezing, but that's okay. I'm trying to. Okay, now that you're back, you're saying the system does work. Therefore, Colleen Rowley, and she's up there in Minneapolis, St. Paul, at our home station, AM 950 Radio. We're so glad that she's here with us today. But no,
Yeah,
but you know, my brother Jesse is also a constitutional scholar and a lawyer, and he said the beauty of our founding documents, the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, he said particularly the Constitution, is that it allows for self-criticism. That is to say, if something is wrong, the founding fathers said amend it.
yeah.
And
Yeah, and that's what would be necessary to change Citizens United. We would probably need a constitutional amendment. We should be seeking one. We should be doing everything we can to get a constitutional amendment on that. In other cases, it's simply a question of challenging in the courts, and that accomplishes a lot. That can actually educate people as well, and your news in theory will cover sometimes if you have an important court case. I would assume the 18 attorney generals that are now suing on birthright citizenship, that will get some news coverage, and so people will be made aware of it, and they'll say, wow, that's like unprecedented. That's another unprecedented thing that Trump just did. So yeah, we have a legal system. We should use it. And we should, even on this genocide, there's now taxpayers are launching lawsuits against their own congresspersons. They're suing congresspersons in California. When I researched it for Minnesota, every one of our congresspeople and our two senators voted to fund the genocide going on in Israel back in April, with the exception of one, Ilhan Omar. Only one voted not to. So yeah, we're getting excited. We're thinking maybe we can get an attorney and we can file a very similar complaint. And that's what people, again, this is kind of an activism in a way, but this is what we need to do right now because these things are systemic. They're not, voting for one party or the other is not the complete. It can be a part of the answer, but it is not it's not going to be enough. because we do get ping pong and we get presidents. When Trump took the oath, did you look over to the side and you saw Hillary and Bill Clinton and
Obama,
and
Bush,
Biden, and you saw, and it was like a club. It was the George Carlin. They're all in a club. I'm sorry. I hate.
And you ain't in it.
Yeah. And I remember the wedding picture of Trump and Melania with Bill and Hillary Clinton all, drinking and having a good. So they have there's this split in the United States is between this establishment elite and again of different and by the way, they switch parties. They actually at that top level, most of your neocon warhawks, they used to be Republicans and they switched to Democrats.
But don't you remember when Robert Strauss had been head of the Democratic Party and the Republican parties? these people, I'm like, you all get out of these silos. You better get away from don't have a party. I get you. But really be wedded to principle. The party, you float. But it's the principle. Period. Y'all. And bless your heart, John, you said I'm upset because my brother didn't get a pardon. I never expected him to. But when I look at people who've been vilified by this society, because he had become very powerful in Congress, and my mother said, they're going to push you out of here. Because we understand how the game works. Haven't you noticed that Bush's nephew, they're in line to push him into power? But isn't it interesting that the children of the progressives, they don't make it. The progressive leadership, their children don't make it. Haven't you noticed that? Isn't that interesting to you? It ought to be. Imperialists are able to propagate, but progressives are stopped. Think about that. So I'm still proud of the work that he did. I knew he was not going to get a pardon, and I'm not waiting on that. I want him to, he's in a PhD program right now for theology. I want him to go on, I want him to get it. I want him to teach. I want him to do. If Dr. King can have a mugshot, all right, I'm with it. That's the kind of company I want to keep. If the president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela, will be classified as a terrorist by our government when he's president, I'll take that. When I look at these other people we've just mentioned, they have dropped bombs and killed people, and heaven help them. I understand why Jimmy Carter held that Bible and taught Sunday school. Because when he thought about all that he had to do as president, I knew it made him sick. But you know what, Amy, I hear you. Leonard Peltier gets to go home. Should have been home decades ago. I've got one. It's not because they have more money, it's because they control the system. We're over here on an imperial project, Amy. And that's just the reality. We're going to be talking about Elon Musk in a couple of minutes, but I'm going to let Colleen Rowley close us out with some words about Leonard Peltier. We're so glad that this great leader has been released. Your thoughts? Has she been frozen again? Oh, everybody, look. We're going to do another show on Leonard Peltier so that you can understand the significance of his work, of his incarceration, and why his pardon was long overdue. In the meantime, we're going to switch on over into the next hour and talk about Elon Musk and this Nazi salute that he gave. No one, that is not in corporate media today. They're not talking about it. That should be like a big fuss. They're not doing that at all. They just kind of let that go. And the ADL have swept it under the rug. They said he didn't really mean it. Are you for real? Yeah. Come on over to the second hour of the Santita Jackson Show. Sending you so much love. Back in just a minute here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota.